Got a question from a lady called Saria, who says that she's been working with L rods for the last month. She's getting quite good with them, and she would like to practice with the pendulum. So she says, please, can I suggest where she can get a pendulum like the one actually that I use, which is this one. You would have seen this one many a time in various videos. She'd appreciate if I can make a video on picking and purchasing a pendulum for beginners. So this actually wasn't my first pendulum. I had one from the British Society of Dowsers. If you Google britishDowsers.org, then you'll come up with the British Society of Dowsers, and the American Society of Dowsers do exactly the same thing. They have a shop on their website. The one that they were kind of made available was quite a nice weighted metal one. This one, as you say, is a crystal one. But the key thing is, as far as I'm concerned, is that get a pendulum that has got a decent weight to it. I mean, I don't know how many grams that is, but that's got a decent weight. I can feel that moving in my fingers, right? I don't need to be looking at it when I'm doing dowsing work on a floor plan for a house or something like that. It'll just respond. So I can feel that moving in a clockwise direction from here, which is my yes response. So you want to be able to feel the weight of it and to feel it moving. Sometimes with some of these light wooden ones, for me, they're just not heavy enough. You can't feel it. You've got to watch what it's doing. That's not. I don't want to be watching my pendulum. You want to be able to feel it, not watch it. The other thing is, you'll see that this one has also got a chain. Let's focus on that again. There you go. So it's got a chain. It's not like a thread, right? It doesn't matter if it's a chain like that or a multi-woven thread. What you don't want is like a single thread that's going to be trying to do its own thing. The reason they put them on chains is so that you don't get any effect of twiddling or kind of a winding effect that's going to influence, when we douse, we want to be looking for a positive response, and therefore it's a circular motion. You don't want your attachment that you're holding it by, in other words, a cord, to be influencing the motion of the pendulum. Okay, so that's something that you want to be aware of. When you first get it, before you start using it, you do want to clear it, and especially say with crystals, treat it rather like something that is alive. So you do actually want to welcome it. You take it out and you would welcome it, but you'd also just ask, you'd thank it for coming to you and for being present, and you kind of look forward to working with it. And obviously you're connecting to upstairs while you're doing this, but you would also ask upstairs to clear the device, to clear the pendulum, so that it is suited for you and it is primed and ready to be working with your energy, always for the utmost good and for the greatest best possible outcome. And simply ask that any detrimental energy is taken away from it, and visualize. This is where you would visualize something like a really fine textured net or something like that, just going through that, and take that away. So just clear it, take away all detrimental energy. You can go like at a subatomic level or something like that. So just ask for that to pass through the pendulum, and you clear it, take away all detrimental energy, and take it away to the light to be processed for the good of the universe in the future as appropriate under the laws of grace. Now, the reason it's a good shape like that, with a nice point at the bottom, is because some people use them and they literally, let's use this for a second. Let's use something else. I'm just sort of illustrating a very vague point. Some people, if that was a floor plan or something like a map or something like that, then some people will use the pendulum looking for something, and they'll literally pull the pendulum across the page, really low against it, and the point therefore is literally the pointing sharp end, and that's gonna sort of stick at a point, and you can then find what you're looking for like that. I don't work that way, as most of you will know. If I'm searching for something, I know this is blank, but if I'm just illustrating, if I'm using a floor plan, then most of you will know that I use my left hand as a pointer, and I am holding the pendulum in my right hand, and expect that the pendulum will respond. I ask the pendulum to respond when I get to the appropriate point. Okay, so, but you know, if you're not going to work with a pendulum in the manner of, you know, dragging it around across the thing like that, there's no reason necessarily to have a pointy end to it. It could just be a cube. It could be any shape you like. Some people really like to have a way of putting what they call a witness in the pendulum itself. So sometimes you can, I haven't seen any for a little while, I have to say, but you can find pendulums with like, well, obviously not in crystal, but with other ones, you can find a little space in it that you could put, if you were looking for a person or a lost animal, for example, you might get the owner of the lost pet to send you a bit of fur sample, you know, a bit of dog hair or something, you know, great, having that arrive through the post. But, you know, pop that in the pendulum, that gives you your witness, which in other words gives you the energy that you're looking for. You're trying to track down and trace the pet, say, then you've got it there. You primed the pendulum, if you like. Again, I don't use witnesses, but the sort of work that I do is not really, you know, ultra specific, working in the three-dimensional world. If I was working with, you know, looking for oil fields, for example, then maybe what I would do is have a little bit of the raw material in a little canister sitting on my desk, so that I could be really tuned in to what it is I'm looking for. So some people will teach dowsing and say that, right, you know, you've got to hold it at the end, and they hold it with a really long chain, and it's like, yeah, we've got to hold it still and just wait for it to respond. And if you want to douse like that, that's fine. That is a way of doing it. It's just that for me that takes too long. I'm quite impatient, and the shorter the chain that you use, then the quicker it's going to respond. And that's the way that I tend to work. I mean, I will sometimes work with it that short, with just an inch, and it responds straight away. It also doesn't have to, as a response, it doesn't have to be a big response, because dowsing, I know this is going to sound a bit daft for some of you, dowsing is not really about that thing that you're holding. Even if you're looking for oil, you know, a three-dimensional, a real 3D thing, real substantial thing that you're looking for. Dowsing is actually about what goes on in here. This is the main thing that is important. What's going on inside is the really important part. It's not really to do with this. This is literally the very crude way that the tiny muscular responses get enlarged, they get exaggerated in the 3 dimensions. So that's why a pendulum is useful, because that's what we use it for. Is to exaggerate the muscular responses. So it in the same way as rods do exactly the same thing. They exaggerate the tiny muscular movement of the hand and the arms, which is the subconscious reaction. And that's a subconscious reaction in response to the question that you've asked. So this is, again, you know, I said earlier on that the meditation is important because it focuses the mind. But also, the more you douse, what you want to be doing is to learn about the processes that go on within you. So what does it feel like? So now, and this is part of the trouble why when we get trickstery sort of energies and we get distracted by that, what actually happens is that our mind gets pulled more into worrying. I mean, it's not really a worry, but being concerned about or being bothered by that energy that is distracting us away from actually being focused here within what we're doing. So if we're looking for something, especially if we're looking for something remotely, you know, a long way away, and we're doing work that's on the other side of the world, for example, well, again, you know, it's not peculiar to house healing. Somebody that's doing oil exploration work for, and I keep talking about oil, but that's only because it's a really good example, but somebody that's doing oil exploration work as a professional dowser for a company that's looking for oil is going to be dowsing potential oil fields, or, you know, way over on the other side of the world. Now, of course, I know that oil is not a terribly, you know, environmentally friendly thing to be looking for, but that's not really the issue that we're dealing with at the moment, okay? But what I'm saying is the process of searching. So as you're dowsing, you're saying, okay, please show me where an appropriate area is for it, let's say exploration. Then you're becoming, as the dowser, and if you're doing the method that I use, which is the finger on the piece of paper, or, you know, whatever, or the atlas, then you're becoming incredibly aware. All of your focus is actually going on what you're looking for, but also what you're feeling. What you're feeling, not only in your fingers there, but also in the body, quite often in the heart. And so, and listening as well. It's just being incredibly, you know, tune up all your internal senses so that you listen, you feel, you are aware, and you also watch as well with your mind, because you can close your eyes. I mean, I've closed my eyes now because I'm in the habit when I'm dowsing, closing my eyes. Part of that is so that I'm not influenced by the floor plan that I'm working with, but also so that I can concentrate. The focus is not only in your own body, but also you can focus on what you're looking for as the target. So you've already got that kind of feeling of what you're looking for and what you're expecting to find, and all the rest of it, right? But you can also listen, because sometimes when you hit, you get the message, you get the hit, but even before the pendulum moves to give you a yes, you might get like a loud noise, kind of, I'm going to say imaginary noise, but what I mean is an internal. You might hear like or you know, like a crack, or you might even hear a voice say, "Yep, that's it," or, you know, anything like that, right? So there's a whole mass of stuff that's going on inside, but you've got to be really focused and drop into that inner space in order to be able to pick up those subtleties. That as a process is not necessarily going to be something that you're aware of, you know, in the first week of dowsing with the pendulum. Trickster stuff, you know, the energies that are out there can sometimes be a little bit playful. If we, when we're dowsing, it's very, 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 very unlikely that we get anything that actually is nasty. You know, there is nothing for a dowser, for a standard dowser, and especially for somebody that's learning. There is nothing out there to be fearful of. But we do recommend that you do psychic protection exercise and/or any other protection that you want to put in place as part of good practice. It's because we are dealing with energies that are powerful. They can be powerful. So you need to get into the good habits and the good practice. And so therefore, before you do any dowsing session, get in there and do the psychic protection. I mean, dowsing is the safest way to start working with the subtle energies, without a doubt. Now, if you're being bothered by tricksters, then it is going to be, if it is genuinely trickster energy, it's going to be just like a little fey, a little thing that just likes, because it can irritate, it knows it can irritate, then it'll just do it for fun. It's rather like having a child, a toddler, that just is interfering just because it can. It wants the attention. These are not big, heavy, dark stuff. This does tie in with, I got a second-hand book. Just let me take the thingy out. Got a second-hand book from the store that most of us love to hate. This is a book by Michael Benteen. Now, Michael Benteen was a British comedian, and he actually was one of the founding members of the Goons with Peter Sellers and Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan. This is, I hadn't realised, this was something that was written in 1990. So it's an old second-hand copy, which has been cleared. but it's very yellowed pages. But anyway, the point was that this is Michael Bentine was actually trained by his father in some very interesting techniques about opening his imagination and then opening into a mindful state. Working with subtle energies, basically. Now, bearing in mind this was written back in 1990, he's also quite, he puts a lot of cautions in to start with in this book. I'm only on page 34. And one of the cautions that he does say is, now he talks about scrying, which is about getting visions and this sort of stuff. I'll just go back. I'm going to read a little paragraph here. It says, whether the scryer is using tarot, the I Ching, the runes of the Norsemen, or simpler forms of divination, such as the Ouija board, with all its attendant perils, which we've talked about before, or the upturned glass, or even the basic yes-no system of the Dowser's pendulum, the danger is always the same: over-dependence on any form of communication with the unconscious mind and its archetypes of the collective unconscious. Those shadowy but nonetheless real creations of centuries of human belief in their existence is bound to weaken the will and lead to all sorts of psychological troubles, ranging from a nervous breakdown to total insanity. Possession and obsession, he says, are close companions once the human will is suborned and disorientated. And he says, I've known unfortunate people who became too closely involved with those methods of prophecy and then found it impossible to stop using them. So that, I mean, that's a rather dramatic warning that Michael Bentine offers there. You know what I mean? But the key thing there that he's talking about is over-dependence on dowsing. So, because what happens is once you get really, really happy and confident with your dowsing and you really get going with it, then you actually start to ask everything about everything. You consult the dowsing for every decision. And dowsing and all of this subtle energy work is actually not about letting go of your power. It's not about taking a decision-making process away from you and sort of handing it over to something else. Right? That's not what we talk about here at all. That is not what it's about. Now he's saying that that's what he's encountered in the past, and that is a real danger, because what we're actually trying to do here is completely the opposite. We're trying to use dowsing and these methods of accessing information and enhancing what is innate in every single one of us, actually for the opposite effect, to actually assist and allow yourself to step back into your power so that you actually are in control of your life. Now, what you're doing is accessing your subconscious, which is a general process and is generally far more accepted now than it was in 1990. And that's part because of the whole global awakening. As everybody wakes up, you know, we're all far more tuned in again now. So there was very much a period of time when this sort of discussion just we wouldn't have been having it. Anyway, so there's a word of warning there from good old Michael Bentine. It's quite an interesting book. It's called Open Your Mind, The Quest for Creative Thinking. Don't be scared of doubting. It's a really you see, okay, so there is so much material that we are bombarded with from the mainstream that actually portrays working in the subtle energies as being either really cool, like a really cool thing to do, a really dramatic thing to do, a really special thing to do, which it isn't. You know, and I mean, most of you will recognize this. It isn't any of those things. It's not special. It's not cool. It's because it is a fundamental part of being a human being. It has its processes that you want to follow, and you want to do so, you know, rigorously and with that respect. But it isn't something that's dangerous in that sense of you're not going to get caught up, and you're not going to get possessed or anything like that. Now, having said that, I might sound as though I'm sort of being a little bit facetious with it. I'm not actually, because when I was going through the big, we'll call it a spiritual awakening, when I was discovering the you know, the incarnate soul of the lady that was living in our house when we moved into that house, and that whole process of waking up and becoming aware of this whole world of subtle energies. One of the big things that I was concerned about, because I was scared of most things in life. One of the things that I was concerned and scared, no, I wasn't scared of, I was concerned about, was the fear of being possessed by something that I couldn't get rid of. And actually, you know, even in the deep and heavy work that we sometimes get involved in as house healers, most of the time, the heaviest energies that we come across with some unfortunate people that have, you know, amassed this sort of darker energy around them through years of exposure to detrimental aspects. None of you, as far as I am aware, have anything like some of the stuff that we come across. But even those people can be helped and assisted, and those energies that are dragging them down can be got rid of. So, you know, everything that we encounter while we're in human form, everything that we encounter in our lives is created by God. It's created by the collective consciousness of the oneness. And so it's not like there's anything that is coming out of the woodwork or coming out of anywhere, coming out of the ether, that is not a product of either the human psyche or the energy fields associated with the creation of reality that occurs every moment of every day. So what I'm saying is that God, which is love, ultimate love, is always the ultimate creator. That is the ultimate. It's corny as heck to say that love conquers all. You know, it's been used in so many movies and so many books. But fundamentally, that's what you're doing, is creating and enhancing and becoming coherent with a greater state of love, because everybody is created from love. That's what God is. Gosh, we've got a bit deep and heavy here, haven't we? We started talking about pendulums and now we're onto the ultimate creator. But what I'm saying is that I want you to think, those of you that are nervous about the slightly darker side of stuff, A, don't worry about it, because most of the time with the dowsing that you're doing, you're not going into that space. B, even if you were, then you are protected instinctively, because you are part of God, and love is the fundamental underlying creative force. So, yes, I know you'll say, well, you look out the window and you don't see much love. That isn't the point. The fundamental creator, everything is permeated with love. Okay? It's actually up to us individually to work with the areas of us where we don't find love. That's healing. And then actually what we do see is more and more love literally being presented in the surroundings, not only out there, but in here.